Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Kevin Baston, and I'm a member of the Worship Associates Ministry here at the church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers to the church, and to call your attention to the special note for you, welcome guests and newcomers, at the bottom of the back side of the order of service. As we continue with reopening, I want to mention a few things to keep in mind. We are masking inside on Sunday mornings as a way of striving to be an inclusive community. After the service, we invite you to gather in two different areas. The courtyard is a mask optional space for fellowship, and the area behind the Jones building, which includes the porch, grassy area, and playground, is a space where masking is mandatory. We are not currently passing the offering baskets, so please make your donation online or place your donation in the offering baskets as you enter or exit the sanctuary. Our virtual coffee hour today is at 11:30 and will be hosted by Rachel Rose and the Welcoming Committee. The Zoom link for that virtual coffee hour is in the weekly announcements and the Sunday morning email.
Sit down, I'll take care of this.
Please turn off or silence any cell phones during our service to maintain a worshipful experience. And this morning we have a Share the Plate on holiday meals from Lisa Epner.
Thanks. Thank you, Kevin. My name is Lisa Epner, and I'm a member of the Community Service Ministry at the church in charge of holiday meals. For over 20 years, we have supported the IFC, which is the Interfaith Council, at Thanksgiving time. Usually they have a meal that provides a community setting for sharing a meal together. However, this year, because of COVID, they are giving out $30 gift certificates to Food Lion to 300 families facing difficult times. It's upsetting to me that in the year 2021, so many in our area are experiencing hunger, and I take great pride that our church supports the Interfaith Council in not only stocking their shelves, but also providing some relief over Thanksgiving. Our church has a long history of supporting holiday meals. It is our member Barbara Rodbell, who herself experienced hunger during World War II, who started holiday meals over 20 years ago. Last year, as a church, we raised over $2,000 for holiday meals. Thank you for adding your donation in the basket as you exit this after the service, or you can do so online, or you can send a check to Dana Lundquist at the church. And don't forget to put in the memo line STP, holiday meals, and on behalf of the IFC, thank you very much.
Our opening hymn this morning is hymn number 347 in the gray hymnal, Gather the Spirit. Please stand as you are able and join in singing.
Amen.
As someone who has run half marathons and marathons in the past, and more so in the past now than it used to be, I particularly appreciate the theme of this morning's service, running the second marathon. Marathons test and drain your physical and mental strength. Marathons also offer an opportunity to achieve, both individually and collectively, more than thought possible. As Catherine Switzer, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, said, "If you are losing faith in human nature, go out and watch a marathon." This morning's service offers an opportunity to take stock of the marathon we've recently run, the COVID-19 pandemic, and to look ahead to the marathon still to come. In that spirit, please consider these words from writer and pastor Ginny Smith. As the gears come to life in our faith communities, we have the opportunity to tell the truth, to slow the pace, and question everything as we enter the new normal. Yes, our second marathon has begun, ready or not. Problem is, our bodies are still recovering from the first marathon. Maybe the answer is to stop running the second race. What if we looked at each other and gently nodded, slowed our forced jog, and started walking together? What if we walked our second marathon? Side by side, no racing, no competing with anything or anyone. Resting when it's time to rest. Saying yes to a new idea when it glistens with possibility. Saying no when something feels too heavy. Asking new questions in places we assumed the old answer. Giving others permission to rest because we choose to rest. Questioning the speed at which we live and move. Loving our people with beautiful boundaries in place. Taking a nap. Maybe this is how we disrupt the deeply ingrained oppressive realities of our world. We choose to walk together. Here's to the second marathon. The words for today's Chalice Lighting are found in the order of service. If you wish to do so, please join me in reading them. In our time of grief, we light a flame of share, the flame of ongoing life. In this time, when we search for understanding and serenity in the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, and community.
So, once you mentioned a little bit about this piece, "Be Like the Bird." It's a poem by Victor Hugo set to music by Abby Bettinas. And Abby Bettinas said she was inspired to write this after she completed her second cancer treatment for the second time. And these are the words of the poem. "Be like the bird that, pausing in her flight a while on boughs too slight, feels them give way beneath her, and sings, and sings, and sings, knowing she hath wings."
At this time, we are going to honor those who since the time of our last new member recognition in church have made the decision to become members of our church family. As Rachel Rose, our Director of Membership and Communications, and Carol Genovese, a member of our welcoming ministry, come forward, I want to invite Rachel to say the names. Each of the names that Rachel is going to read, and there are a lot, are people who have become members of our church. They've taken the Exploring Membership class, understand the rights, responsibilities, and expectations of membership. And as we call their names, I think for space, the best way to make this work is for people to kind of gather, starting with the kind of the pulpit, and then spread all the way down the aisles as far as you can go, kind of at the right distance. So whatever that is for you. So Rachel, were my instructions clear enough? Okay, good.
Dale Chodorow, Taffy Chodorow, Michelle Brooks, Roy Brooks, Chris Spey, Ellie Spey, David Geneve, Rick Nida, Leslie Zeldin, just come on down and let's just stand in a big, warm, hug of humans. Socially distanced hug, of course, with consent. Leslie Zeldin, Ann Dupree, Rachel McManus, Maris Abernathy, that's perfect. Paul Sykes, Lynn Sykes, Alexa Adamo Valverde, Michael Adamo Valverde, Richard Newlist, Maya Zaret, Lois Lee, Charles Lee, Allison Stolberg-Siebens, Lynn Holbein, Reverend Allison Wilbur Eskildson, Paul Eskildson, Rosemary Dean, Liz Ness, Brian Ness, Mark Silling, Susan Heyman, Pam Webb, Don Kataden, Etta Bright, and Franz Verhagen.
On behalf of the Membership Committee, it is a joy to welcome you into the community of memory and hope. Each time we welcome a new member, we become something new. So we ask you, as our newest members, will you promise to walk together with us, sharing the joys and the responsibilities of membership? If so, please say, we will.
We will.
Members of the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalists, will you welcome these people into our congregation? Will you reach out to them in friendship, including them in our activities and fellowship? Will you be open to their unique gifts and perspectives? Will you extend a warm welcome to each of them, remembering that each of us was once a new member? If so, please say, we will.
We will.
Becoming a member of this church is an important first step, but it's only a first step. I charge you new members to grow in your faith, and more importantly, I charge you to find and share your special gifts with us. Ours is a shared ministry. Each of us has a crucial role to play. We need you. We need your energy. We need your ideas. As you give generously of yourselves, we all become richer.
And wait, there is more. Now what is going to happen is that Rachel is going to move down the line and present you with a chalice pin so that you can wear your faith on your lapel or your sleeve or whatever. And then Carol and I are going to follow Rachel, offering each of you either a handshake or a distance handshake or an elbow bump or whatever you're most comfortable with. And congregation, as they make their way through, I invite us to give our new members a warm and great applause. How we do it is that once you have your pin, you're invited to return to your seat. I think that's how we'll do it.
Hi, everybody. This next song is a song that I first heard this summer. It's an old Paul Simon song. I don't think he intended it to be sung in church, but it just struck me as a fun song to sing and a fitting song for this period when we're pulling out of a rough time and opening up a bit.
I've kicked around some, I don't fall too easily. But that poor boy looked so dejected, he just grabbed my sympathy. little boy has died. So what's your problem? Tell me why you're so downcast. I've had a long streak of bad luck, and I'm praying it's gone at last. 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 I've had a long streak of bad luck, and I'm praying it's gone at
Every once in a while, from out of nowhere, when you least expect it, and you're unprepared, somebody will come and lift you higher,
and your burden will be shared. I do believe if I hadn't met you, I might still be
in fact, I've had a long streak of bad luck, but I'm praying it's gone at last. Gone at last. Gone at last. At last. At last. I've had a long streak of bad luck, but I'm praying it's gone at last. Gone at last. Gone at last. At last. At last. I've had a long streak of bad luck, but I'm praying it's gone at last.
Each week in our service, we hold a time for sharing the joys and the sorrows that we bring with us into this church community. It's during this time that I invite you, if you've come this morning with either a significant personal joy or a significant personal sorrow, that you're invited to come forward, say your name into the microphone, place a stone in the bowl, and briefly share your joy or your sorrow. Let us enter into this time of tenderness and trust.
Good morning, my name is Jenny Warnash. This stone is for Catherine at Chernow. She died a couple days before Halloween. She was 21 years old. She died, was hit by a car crossing the street. She's from Chapel Hill. She was a senior at UNC in the nursing program, which is how I know her. We were in the same cohort together, and we miss her, and I know her family misses her. She was gonna be a midwife, and it's just a really sad loss.
Morning, my name is Paul Maddox. About a year ago, I had a tooth extracted and my jaw broke as a consequence of that, and had a long streak of bad luck, and I pray it's gone at last.
My name is Susan Blanchard. My first stone is a stone of joy. Donna and I spent 2 days driving to Vermont, spent 2 days with our daughter, whom we had not seen since August of 2019, and spent 2 days driving back, looking at the sun. That was a sorrow. So there's also I have a sorrow in my heart for Isabel Burney. Isabel was in charge of membership and greeting in the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Blacksburg, Virginia, and so we got to be very close with her when we were there. And Isabel was diagnosed with breast cancer a year ago, had a mastectomy, and has recently found out that it has metastasized to her spine, and the treatment options were not very good. So Isabel, who has always been an advocate for choosing your death, has chosen hospice care and to stop eating and drinking and to be in charge of both her life and her death.
My name's Susie Hafer. I don't know if I can do this. I have a good friend in her early 50s who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and had major surgery Friday, and lasted 7 hours. And so hopefully she'll survive the surgery and then have chemo for 5 months. But she has a 10-year-old daughter that she's raising on her own, and a mother who's got many medical problems. So please keep her in your thoughts.
My name is Judy Lechner, and I have a sorrow. My first cousin, who's my only first cousin, and very close, just died. We grew up in Hungary together, and then we came to America shortly one after the other, and he's been in my life all my life. He was 85.
My name is Susan Spalt, and my first stone is for 3 dear friends who are suffering from cancer. My good friend Edwina went into hospice care this week. My other friend with brain cancer is doing a little better, but her daughter recently fell and broke both ankles. My third friend Jim is scheduled for a bone marrow transplant in early December. And our niece, who is stubbornly unvaccinated, now has COVID. And I also ask you to keep in your hearts all the school nurses who are on the front lines and are burning out and really, really struggling with everything. The last stone is a stone of joy, because we are going to Seattle on Wednesday, where our little granddaughter is jumping up and down with excitement at seeing us. And our grandson keeps saying, I wish you were coming today. And so we are very excited to be going back out to rainy Seattle to spend time with our grandkids. Thank you.
My name is Frans Hagen. And I am concerned that those many youngsters and activists, both within the climate conference and also outside, that they don't get discouraged by the results of the conference. And I hope that they understand that this is not a race towards the 1.5 Celsius, but really a marathon. Thank you.
I'm Rosemary Dean, and I have a joy and a sorrow. I'm joyful that I'm a new member, and my husband and I got our first overnight date night celebrating 7 years of marriage Friday. My sorrow is that our neighbor who is caring for his wife who had advanced Alzheimer's suddenly passed away this week. and they're looking for a home for his blind horse, if anyone has connections.
Good morning, my name is Ben Rotenberg. My sorrow today is for a neighbor and caretaker for our kiddos at times in the past who has been diagnosed again with cancer. And she has lots of people praying for her, but we could always use more. Her name is Laura Lansinger. She lives here in Chapel Hill. So if you could keep her in your hearts, thanks.
I have a concern and a joy. The concern first is my son's beloved in Oklahoma, who has both her vaccine shots and her booster shot, came down with a breakthrough COVID case last week. And she's recovering, but did have many of the symptoms, and mostly feels very anxious about going back to work at the place where she caught it, because so many people there are unvaccinated, and she's worried about how she's going to continue on in that environment. So if you could hold her in your heart. My joy is 56 years ago this day, or this week, my husband and I had our first date. And we went to see a play in New Haven called The Skin of Our Teeth. And today, my husband and I are going to Playmakers 56 years later in the same week and seeing The Skin of Our Teeth.
A final stone is placed for all those joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts, which were not spoken. Won't you take a time to think of all of these joys and sorrows, as well as those of our hearts, as well as those of our world, as we hold together a moment of silence. Amen, and blessed be.
While the choir's assembling, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this piece we're doing. It's called A Path to Hope. It's in 3 very short movements, and it draws inspiration from the reflections written by Canadian choral music educators early in the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think it mirrors the journey that we've all taken in the last 18 months. Today, the choir you see in front of you is joined by 5 members who are joining us remotely on a Zoom call right now. Lex Headley, Brian Moyer, Katie Headley, Joanne Haggerty, and Ivy Brazina. So they'll be the voices that you'll be hearing while we're singing this piece. You'll hear Lex, Brian, and Katie's voices before the first movement, Ivy and Joanne during the second movement, and all 5 of them will be during the third movement. So in the first movement, like the beginning of the pandemic, the choir is without a voice. As you know, there was one of the first super spreader events was a choir in Oregon, I think, and after that, it's like, that was it. So we only use body percussion, and the rhythms that the choir will be doing on the body percussion spell out in Morse code the word voiceless. And in the last 4 bars, you'll see the word voiceless is spelled out literally in Morse code. The second movement tells us that it's not the change, but the fear that holds us down. And the third movement is built on the word believe and ends with the hope that soon we'll all sing together again as one. And the text during the third movement was all contributed by members of the choir. Members of the choir sent in their reflections on their experience of music and living during the pandemic, and the words that they'll be saying are from the choir for the third movement. So now, a path to hope.
Don't speak.
Don't touch.
Don't breathe. Don't move. There will be no singing anymore.
It's out of our control.
No one is listening. Don't speak. Don't touch.
Don't breathe. Don't move.
No singing. The world is silent. Still, without voice, we sing.
Scares me most is not knowing what the future holds. A lack of certainty, of control. Some days, I'm not sure how long I can keep holding on under the pressure.
I wonder if this will ever end, if we'll ever sing together again, or if all my experiences will become nothing more than memories.
My fear is that the world will change and I'll stay the same.
Our world has experienced trauma like this before. We do come out on the other side.
Fear, like wildfire in a dry forest, spreads easily. Because I'm afraid doesn't mean you have to be.
We each have our own fears, but we can rise to this. Raise your voices with us.
Life is constantly changing. Have patience.
When you are afraid, uncertain, or fearful, go outside and do something that you did as a kid.
Roll in the leaves. Dance when the wind blows. Sing, ring around the rosy.
Find a bug or a leaf to examine closely.
Crane your neck and look up into the sky.
Hope has been the sunrise that beams at me, even through the clouds. So many things have brought me hope, like the birth of my beloved granddaughter a year ago.
My children who are parents give me hope as they courageously live their lives during this scary time.
Keeping music in my life throughout the pandemic has given me hope and connection.
Without singing together, we were lost, each in our separate packages.
But now, as we sing, we can see the notes touch each other.
We weave together our musical fabric, in person and virtually.
Don't worry, my sermon this morning is not a marathon. Last month, I got a new car. It was new to me. A pre-owned 2020 Hyundai Ioniq. A sensible car for a minister. I kind of wanted a Jaguar. But if I had gotten one of those, there might have been some gossiping. So I didn't get a Jaguar. But it's a pretty car, deep cobalt blue, and it's a hybrid. My first hybrid I've ever owned. And my neighbor Larry, my next door neighbor Larry, who sings in the choir, warned me right after I got it to remember to keep my eyes on the road. Good advice, because the displays on the hybrid dashboard are constantly kind of moving and can be distracting. Especially the one telling you your fuel efficiency, which I'm trying to, just a constant feedback, I see some nodding, a constant feedback on how I'm driving, and the one telling me how charged my batteries are. Which I kind of, how are they, are the batteries charged up, or are they low charge? Are any hybrid owners who are like with me on that? Is this familiar? And so there's that lesson advice, which was don't look at how charged your batteries are. Keep your eyes on the road. And this morning, metaphorically, I'm going to break that advice because I'm going to invite all of us to take our eyes off the road, whatever road we're living in our lives, and consider our batteries. I'll start with a little energy check. I wonder how many people here in this room are feeling in their lives run down, low energy, depleted these days. And I don't just mean, did you sleep all right last night? I don't just mean did you have enough coffee this morning. I don't just mean has your body finally adjusted to the time change. I mean on an existential level. I mean on that soul level. Maybe you're feeling depleted, exhausted, worn down, and that low charge warning on your dashboard is beginning to blink. Maybe that's you. Or maybe that's not what your dashboard is telling you. Maybe your dashboard is telling you that your energy level is right there in the middle, that things seem to be running smoothly and efficiently, well within the suggested range. Or maybe that's not you either. Maybe you came in here feeling this morning like your life's batteries are fully charged. Maybe you're feeling supercharged, rip-roaring, and ready to go. Is that you? Energy check. Where do you find yourselves these days? Depleted, charged, fired up and ready to go? The original inspiration for this sermon was a blog post I read earlier last summer. The piece was a short reflection by a Christian minister and author named Jenny Smith, and it was called The Second Marathon. It was published on July 2nd, just 2 days before we here at Community Church held our first in-person worship service after nearly 16 months of worshiping and holding religious education over our computer screens. The Second Marathon was an article whose audience was ministers, clergy, and perhaps anyone involved in leadership of religious community. But it seemed to me that with just a little translation, its audience was far broader. Jenny Smith said that making it to that point in the pandemic, July, when the numbers were down and vaccines were widely available and things seemed to be moving towards greater normalcy, had been like running a marathon. It had been grueling in terms of the things expected of us, but also in terms of our emotions, the emotional toll of the pandemic, the grief, the loss, the isolation, the anxiety, and the uncertainty. And the second marathon, as Jenny Smith wrote, was this sense of finishing that really, really hard period, getting to the end of that really hard period, the first marathon, and then having our world say, yay! Let's regather and reopen and do everything we've put off. Here's another number on your back. Let's go. Let's run a second. As Jenny Smith writes about starting that second marathon, we look down at our blistered, aching feet, our hopeful but exhausted heart, our overwhelmed but determined mind, and we take a step forward into life as gathered community once again. In hindsight, Jenny Smith's piece may have one flaw. Because as it turns out, that first marathon wasn't even over. That was a fake ending. We got into a part and then it was really, nope, there's more race to go. Because with the rise of the Delta variant and the surge in cases coming just a few weeks later, the pandemic wasn't really over. It was as if we were being asked to start a second marathon while we were still, truth be told, running the first. But on another level, Jenny Smith's metaphor of the second marathon rings extremely true. The first marathon was grueling. I like to joke, because sometimes you have to joke, that I never aspired to be a televangelist. And I still don't. And I think of our staff called to so many unfamiliar roles, everything from auto-tuning to Zoom, finding ourselves directors, producers, photographers, editors, technology experts, social media influencers. Marion and Kat are great social media influencers. And it was grueling, not just for us, but for everyone on an emotional and spiritual level. I think of the memorial services held over Zoom, rescheduled weddings that were then rescheduled again, and then held with so many family and friends unable to be with a celebrating couple in person. What, celebrating graduating seniors with a car parade? Not feeling them deserving so much more. We emerged from this in July. The survivors of trauma, spirits battered and bruised, layers of loss and grief piled high. And it was hard. It was hard for parents, so hard for parents of young kids, so hard for young kids, so hard for people who are single, and so hard for people in relationship, so hard for people who had to work from home, and so hard for people who had to go in, so hard for teachers, so hard for doctors, so hard for nurses, so hard for everyone. And somehow, at least here in this church community, we've jumped right into that second marathon. To run both of the marathons, and to do so with actually a lot of strength and stamina and verve. In many ways, our church has sort of caught a second wind. Just consider the things as a church that have happened in just the past 3 weeks. We held an auction that set new records for money raised, exceeding our goal by 50%. Our immigrant justice ministry never took a break during the pandemic, stepped up to offer housing to a refugee family of 9 from Afghanistan. And our community and our partners have responded with this just amazing and overwhelming generosity of spirit. In the meetings that I've attended, I'm learning that our Day of Service team is forging ahead with plans for a Day of Service on March 5th. And our ministries and our groups are responding with enthusiasm and planning service projects to offer. We had a nice, big exploring membership class that wrapped up on Thursday evening. You saw those new members who stretched from that corner to that corner. Our choirs are singing, our groups are meeting, our children and youth programs are flourishing, and most Sundays, there is a feeling of aliveness and buzz and energy here in this church. Do you feel that? Do you feel that? It is exciting and exhausting because we are still running the first marathon, even as we run this second marathon. Hallelujah! And and let me reflect something else. This burst of energy that we are seeing is actually pretty rare. Our community, our church is flourishing and vibrant right now, and that feels like the exception rather than the rule these days. Now, it is probably spiritually dangerous and unwise to compare ourselves to other churches, to other UU churches. It's not a competition, and at the same time, it seems that we are thriving here in a way that many other congregations are not. We are, by membership numbers, the 4th largest UU church in North Carolina. The 3 largest UU churches in our state have to date held a total combined of 3 in-person worship services since March 2020. This morning is our 20th. We're in our 5th month of holding in-person services. Many UU congregations are not holding in-person religious education. They're not singing together. Their choirs are not meeting. Frankly, I'm worried for our larger faith. And it's not just that congregations are struggling in this time. High levels of anxiety coupled with exhaustion has been a recipe for disaster in our larger faith movement. There is an epidemic of burnt-out ministers quitting, and an epidemic of anxious congregations scapegoating and firing their ministers. This is not unique to churches, I think. The great resignation we are seeing at the societal level is being felt in churches too. I have no agenda in telling you this. It's not a threat, it's not a warning. I am not dropping any hints. I am not dropping any hints. That wasn't an ask for applause either. And it is so weird because in many ways, the stretch of ministry over the past several months has been actually very fulfilling and very enjoyable, which sounds completely bonkers and perverse to say, but is true nonetheless. And this is really not the sermon I planned to give this morning, because when I read that piece about the second marathon, when I decided to preach on it, I was really resonating with its message. I was carrying a lot of the anxiety of reopening, weary and apprehensive, and then somewhere along the way, I felt like I caught my second wind. So back to you, battery check. How are you? Depleted? Charged? Supercharged? Marathon check. Are you blistered, bruised, and exhausted? Just kind of crawling across that finish line? Or have you caught a second wind? Or maybe a little bit of both? The message that I have this morning is not to aspire to some level. Where you are is where you are. And it's okay to be where you are. I want to end with these words from our reading with which Kevin, our worship associate, began. Jenny Smith writes, as the gears come to life in our faith communities, we do have the opportunity to tell the truth, to slow the pace, and to question everything as we enter this new normal. Yes, our second marathon has begun, ready or not. The problem is our bodies are still very much recovering from the first. So what if we didn't treat this second race, as a competition? What if we looked at each other and gently nodded, slowed our forced jog, started walking together? What if we just walked this second marathon side by side? No racing, no competing with anything or anyone. What if we walked together? The closing hymn this morning is about that walking together. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing one more step.
Please remain standing in body or spirit. You will find the words for extinguishing the chalice in your order of service. Please join me if you wish to do so. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now it is time for us to sing Shalom, in keeping with our COVID protocols. If you prefer not to hold hands during the singing, just cross your hands over your chest. If you are comfortable holding hands with those around you, please indicate that by putting your hands out to either side. Shalom.